So again, why is everything the way that it is? Well, before anything existed, before time, space, angels, or humanity, there was only Yah. Not a universe waiting to be filled, not a council of gods, just the eternal creator whose very nature is pure consciousness, order, goodness, and absolute freedom along with his word. And when Yah decided to create, he didn't bring life into existence just to control it. He created intelligent beings, celestial and human, who could think, understand, choose, and be aware of that fact. The capacity to be aware of our choice is the first sign that we are made in his image. Because if there's no freedom of choice, there's no likeness to God. And Yah's entire nature operates from perfect, voluntary goodness. He always chooses righteousness, even though he could choose anything. So when he made us, beings with real agency, the risk of evil was built in. If you're going to share the image of God with other sentient beings, then you also make it possible for them to reject you. Because in order to truly be like God, we have to be able to genuinely love and choose God, rather than having programmed obedience to him. Eden was the first demonstration of this. A world in perfect order, the wild tamed into a garden where everything aligned with Yah's design. And the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the middle of the garden wasn't a trap either. It was a statement. In order to truly be human, we have to have the freedom to choose our destiny. We aren't animals driven only by instinct. We are moral beings given the ability to make decisions with eternal weight. But remember, we have freedom to determine our choices, but not the freedom to determine the outcomes of those choices. Freedom does not require the ability to determine what happens when we make our choices, or else we would take away the freedom the world around us has to react to our choices in order to bend it to the will of our desired outcomes. The serpent being in the garden also matters. It shows that angels have the same freedom we have. One of them, Satan, the serpent, used that freedom to challenge Yah's design. And notice how the fall happens. And I quote, "When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye," end quote. The moment humanity even entertained the idea of defining good and evil on our own terms, we stepped outside of the order that gives life. You can't step outside the source of life and keep life. And that's where the bigger conflict starts. The cosmic accusation. Satan knows he cannot overthrow Yah, so his goal is to discredit Yah to humanity and to claim Yah can't be loved freely by humanity. To say that every act of obedience towards Yah from humanity is from self-interest or fear. That accusation shows up openly in the book of Job. I quote, "Does Job serve God for nothing?" End quote. Satan is saying if righteousness only exists when life is easy, then it isn't righteousness at all. It's a transaction. This reveals why Satan lied. So that humanity gained access to the knowledge of good and evil, so that humanity would forever wrestle with what is good and what is evil. In doing this, Satan knew humans would make the decisions and conditions for a world of suffering, which would create the perfect conditions for Satan to accuse God to humans based on our suffering, and for Satan to accuse humans to God based on the evil we commit to create the suffering we experience. The story of Job perfectly exemplifies this struggle between God and mankind, with Satan as the instigator of this struggle. Satan wants the sovereignty Yah has for himself, but since he knows he cannot have it, he became a nihilist, essentially, and only seeks to steal, kill, and destroy the works of God. But Yah allows the test of Job to serve as a revelation to Job, humanity, and Satan. Job has to learn you don't serve God based on self-interest, but based on the fact that he alone is God. Through Job, humanity learns this lesson too. Satan is also shown that Yah's love for us is not based on our works alone, but based on his grace for us, and demonstrates to Satan through Job that his creation of humanity is good and his ultimate will for humanity will be done. And those he chooses will receive their double portion regardless of what Satan intends to do. True love requires choice. Holiness requires choice. Adam in the garden, Job in the ashes, and Yeshua in the wilderness all face the same principle. Righteousness can only exist when it's given a choice to not be. So in order to be like God, we have to have freedom of choice. And in order to have full freedom of choice, we have to be able to even choose unrighteousness. Hence the presence of the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Garden of Eden. After the fall, humanity's clear knowledge of the Creator became fractured. What was once pure revelation turned into myth, superstition, and partial memories. Fallen celestial beings made this worse by influencing humanity with more forbidden knowledge. That's why ancient civilizations across the world share distorted echoes of truth of El Shaddai, who is Yah. Despite all of this, Yah preserved a line of clarity of truth through men like Enoch, Noah, Shem, Melchizedek, and eventually Abraham. Abraham was the point where Yah began to rebuild understanding. Each covenant became a structure that realigned humanity with divine order, step by step, generation by generation. Even in our fallen state, humanity's original calling did not disappear. Being made in Yah's image means we are meant to bring order to the world, both the physical world and the inner world of our soul. Every act of cultivation, building, creating, or establishing justice is humanity reflecting Yah's order in the earth and in ourselves. But to understand suffering, you really have to look at Job. Job started like Adam, protected, blessed, and stable, and then faced the same accusation. Through his suffering, Job learned trusting Yah even when he couldn't understand what was happening. Yah didn't answer Job with explanations. He answered with identity. Quote, "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?" End quote. Job realized that true holiness is trusting the one who created reality, even when we can't see the reasoning. And when that understanding is solid, Yah restored Job, not back to Eden level innocence, so to speak, but to a deeper, wiser place, which foreshadows the eternal kingdom of heaven, the real double portion. It's also intentional that the earliest humans, earliest civilizations, and earliest divine encounters all happened in the same region, Northeast Africa and the Near East and even the Mediterranean. That area is the center of most foundational ideas that spread throughout the world, ideas that we hold on to even to this day. It makes sense that the chosen land of Yah wasn't somewhere in Mesoamerica or Far East Asia. The distance it would take for information of various ideas to get to very different groups of people would take many, many years if it was in different parts of the world other than where they originate today. And that's why it makes so much sense that most popular religions and ideas come from the same place civilization practically originated. And that's why Israel is the place Yah chose to place his people in the beginning of knowledge of himself, because it is in the very center of the meeting of all of these regions in the cradle of human civilization. This is no accident. The cradle of humanity and the birthplace of revelation are connected. Yah chose Israel, one of the smallest, least powerful, and not that beautiful of a nation, just as he formed man from dust, because he reveals himself through the humble, not the proud. Egypt and Babylon were resource and mineral rich and represented human self-deification and vanity. Israel, being a dusty and desert type land, represented humility. All of this points to Yeshua. Every covenant, every test, every revelation leads to him. Yeshua is the second Adam, the one who chooses correctly where the first failed. In the wilderness, he confronted the same accuser, Satan. But how did he respond? Not my will, but yours be done. That restored the alignment Adam broke. Through that obedience, he dismantled the accusation that God's love and humanity's righteousness aren't real. Through his resurrection, he opened the path for humanity to step back into what we were originally meant to be. That brings us to the purpose of time. Yah doesn't end evil immediately, because doing that would eliminate freedom of choice for mankind. And destroying freedom of choice destroys humanity along with it. The world we live in now, with both good and evil present, is the environment where our freedom is refined. Suffering, temptation, and experience all shape our will so that when the kingdom comes, we'll be capable of eternal bliss without losing our freedom of choice. And the story will end where it began, with paradise. But this time it won't be in innocence, it'll be in wisdom. Evil will be removed forever. Death and Hades will be destroyed. The serpent won't return, and the only tree left will be the tree of life. And we will receive our double portion like Job did. Freedom will still exist, but rebellion will no longer rise, because everyone in that kingdom will choose Yah fully, freely, and permanently. This is the point of human history. Yah is teaching his image bearers how to love him freely, how to understand that any definition of good apart from him leads to death, And by the end of our journey, through freedom, failure, covenant, redemption, and refinement, Yah will have a people who choose him because they finally understand that only he is good, which will only then make us good also. And when that revelation is complete, paradise becomes something we don't just live in, it becomes something we embody. So that's why everything is the way that it is. And this is not only how we suffer, but why we suffer. Repent and believe the good news, for the kingdom of heaven is near.